Failing marriages, religious fanaticism, child neglect, verbal abuse, abandonment, self-harm, self-loathing, self-portraits. For those of you in couples therapy, I'm not talking about your family. I'm talking about the video game Devotion, my favorite horror title of all time. And for a moment, it seemed like everyone else shared that opinion. And then it got review bombed and fucking deleted. In 2019, Devotion was released on Steam with very positive reviews and was on its way to becoming a modern classic. It drew inspiration from atmospheric horror like PT and those very immersive walking simulators like Gone Home or What Remains of Edith Finch, which is ironic, seeing as Devotion wasn't initially planned to be 3D, but 2D. Red Candle Games, to accurately fulfill their vision, knew Devotion couldn't be designed in this medium, pushing 12 hardworking developers into learning Unity 3D. Can you tell I wrote this script before the controversy?
John Rissy Tiello, more like John Sissy Tiello, because he's a little bitch.
What makes Devotion stand out from others is its setting, Taiwan, a country which is rarely explored in video games. Red Candle knew that Taiwanese culture doesn't get enough coverage in gaming and wanted to create a new setting for gamers, as well as something nostalgic and familiar to its Taiwanese audience. According to Wikipedia, for games that take place in Taiwan, there are a total of 11 titles, 2 of which are created from our friends at Red Candle, with the most popular being Black Ops 2. And if you look it up, it's only because that one DLC multiplayer map named Pod, which no one gives a shit about or remembers,
I do,
also takes place in Taiwan, so like it really doesn't even count. Cultural accuracy isn't the only praise Devotion's received. On Steam, the game's held very positive reviews for its narrative, gameplay,
damn, that's good,
music, for, you know, 2 days? Red Candle Games said in an interview that Devotion was never intended to be political, but instead critique religious fanaticism, a driving force for the plot of the story. Ironically, it was a political statement found in the game that resulted in a bunch of angry Chinese gamers into review bombing it on Steam. That's right, this game's removal isn't a result of gut-churning gore or a sickening message.
Now today's topic: the creation of suicide bombers and mass shooters.
But to contain an angry mob from reviewing it unfairly, all because a Chinese political figure was made fun of once. Inside the game, you can find a Fulu talisman that reads Happy New Year. Pretty innocent as of now, but that's because you're looking at the patched version of this asset. The original version of this talisman was responsible for Devotion's infamy. When pronounced, the 4 characters on the corner of the talisman read, Your mother is an idiot, and the red seal says, Xi Jinping, Winnie the Pooh. This had Chinese players feeling disrespected and quote-unquote tricked into playing a game that mocked their Chinese general secretary. And you know what you do when a video game makes fun of the government that strips away your rights as a citizen and methodically restricts freedom to maintain power? You review bomb the game on Steam for social credit. Unfortunately, because of the negative feedback, all aspects of the game, including its portrayal of Taiwan's culture as highly superstitious, its depiction of a religiously extreme society, the representation of unrealistic parental expectations placed on children, were all seen as an attack rather than criticism towards Chinese culture as a whole. All of this bad press eventually led Red Candle Games to delist the game from Steam in China only 3 days after its release. And 2 days after that, they removed the game from Steam worldwide. Taiwan's Vice Premier Chen Chi-mai spoke out in defense of the game regarding the Easter egg, saying, only in countries with democracy and freedom can creation be free from restrictions. I read this online and I thought it was badass enough, and then I found out that he also streamed the game on Facebook. I'm at a loss for words. Well, not really, because all of this is pre-written, but it's just awesome how he did that. And seriously, fuck censorship, because not only was a masterpiece that 12 developers worked really hard to make ruined, people's careers were at risk. Sina Weibo, with over 445 million monthly active users as of Q3 2018, has Red Candle's account blocked and posts containing the hashtag Devotion hidden by Chinese censors. Keep in mind, this is an indie company getting banned on public forums for a singular insult. In July 2019, the Chinese government revoked the license of India Event, one of the game's publishers, due to violating relevant laws. A single joke about a political figure resulted in any justification to burn an entire company to the ground. Further reports indicate that the Chinese government found India Event's actions as quote-unquote a threat towards national security. There are reports of people being so afraid of China's over-the-top censorship, they feared this single controversy would affect the future of Steam's accessibility in China. And by the way, it's funny, Steam isn't even officially approved there. It remains operable if you use a VPN, at least for now. Red Candle Games decides to do further damage control and release an apology, confirming that they don't plan on re-releasing Devotion for the time being in order to prevent unnecessary misconception, but would consider re-releasing the game in the future if the public would be willing to view this game rationally, which is actually the line that inspired me to make this video. I want to review the game deeply and rationally, despite it scaring the shit out of me sometimes. In June 2020, Red Candle Games announced that it would begin running pre-orders for a physical edition of the game, available only in Taiwan from June 8th to the 15th. And on December 16th, 2020, Red Candle Games and GOG.com announced that the game would finally be available on GOG Store on December 18th. Finally, a solution to all this censorship. Finally, we get to see this game have a proper release for more than 72 hours. Right, guys? Right? Right? Unfortunately, not even a few hours later, GOG licks the boots of the Chinese government and releases a statement. Earlier today, it was announced that the game Devotion is coming to GOG. After receiving many messages from gamers, we have decided not to list the game in our store. Over 8,000 quote tweets and angry replies later, GOG effectively lost the respect of its customers. But it's the internet, so everyone forgot in 2 seconds. Not only were GOG so afraid to piss off the Chinese government that they canceled Devotion's re-release, but they also had the audacity to vaguely put the blame on, I'm assuming, upset gamers. And to be clear, GOG is okay with upsetting gamers. It's actually a trend of theirs. They only really have a problem with upsetting gamers when they speak Mandarin and their president is a communist dictator. Fortunately, there is a happy ending to this story. Red Candle Games opened their own digital storefront to sell Devotion, as well as their prior game Detention and any other future titles. So if you enjoyed this video and think the game is as great as I do, support Red Candle Games. Be the guy that supports free creation. And lastly, even if you need to close this video, play the game. It's got a tragic, compelling narrative delivered in a short sitting with an awesome soundtrack. Devotion's opening begins in a living room. The TV in front of our character is playing broadcasts such as the news and the weather, and the lady, presumably our wife, speaks from the kitchen, talking about a young girl named Mei Shin. The lady speaks about various aspects of Mei Shin's life, including her experiences at school, her involvement in religious activities, her social interactions, and her progress towards fulfilling her dream. This lady is clearly Mei Shin's mother, making small talk with her father, the character you're playing, about their daughter. However, when the mother asks where Mei Shin is, our character has a panic attack. After the memory fades, we gain control of our character. It's suddenly nighttime and the house is a mess. Inspecting the living room, we notice a few details: small posters, family portraits, and a red arowana, also known as the dragonfish, which is considered to bring luck and prosperity.
Why don't you try going to the casino?
Ironic, given how fucked this game gets. We have a cute little kitchen, which is dark as hell, kind of stresses me out, but if you're near the window, you can hear the rain, which is pretty therapeutic. The walls are filled with a bunch of photographs of a family, but they're pretty hard to make out. The TV in the living room perpetually plays static, and whenever you try to turn it off, it just springs back to life. On the living room table are doodles belonging to Mei Shin and a photo of Li Fang. Her Qipao dress helped establish her iconic image. I loved her. Before leaving, I noticed a calendar marking the date as Wednesday, October 7th, 1987. Walking out, we slowly approach this ominous red door, which contains an insignia of the year of the rabbit, also 1987. Entering through the door, we find ourselves exactly where we started. Kind of creepy, but at least the lights are on, making it possible to see the photos more clearly. Most importantly, we find a family portrait of Mei Shin, Li Fang, and I, as well as a height chart to record Mei Shin's growth. If it wasn't obvious obvious already, Mei Shin is your character's daughter, Li Fang is your wife, the husband, referred to as I, is the main protagonist. However, his identity still remains a mystery. But it's clear that this place that you keep revisiting in that PT-style fashion is your home.
Oh, good. I thought it was going to be a looping level of nightmares.
This time, the L-shaped hallway is accessible, but for some reason, Mei Shin's bedroom, as well as the bathroom, are locked. However, the door at the end of the hallway is open, and we explore. In a dimly lit, narrow hallway, we cautiously advance, our eyes fixed on an enigmatic red umbrella that lies ominously ahead. As we near, the umbrella undergoes a startling transformation, morphing into a solitary red shoe, its significance shrouded in mystery. Suddenly, the eerie silence is shattered by footsteps. Behind us, a ghostly apparition of a woman, her form barely discernible in the shadowy corridor. This chilling encounter leaves more questions than answers, each element a piece of a puzzle that begs to be solved, and the true nature of these symbols and their connection to our character remain cloaked in mystery. We see the red door again, but this time it's locked, with a sign of the year of the monkey, 1980, 7 years prior. Inside the mailbox, we find a key with the same label. Heading inside, we find our house again, almost completely empty outside of a couple of items. A craft paper envelope is tacked to the wall, delivered to yours truly. Inside is a movie script written by Unveiling Yu. It's ironically about a couple moving into their new home, and seeing how we've just gone back 7 years, this screenplay must be emulating a moment in time where our protagonist is also moving into a new place with his wife. When our protagonist is going from different versions of his house, he is effectively time traveling, whether physically through memories or spiritually. In this case, we're in the after image of the reality where we've just moved into our house in 1980. On the living room table, we grab a portrait of our wife in her glory days. Inside the cardboard box is a porcelain bowl and a trophy. Inserting the best screenwriter trophy into the cabinet spawns a ton of furniture around you. The porcelain bowls are actually custom made. When you flip them over, you can see the bottoms are mysteriously labeled "Do." Placing the porcelain bowls in the kitchen, our character reminisces about how Li Fang used to use them to prepare dinner for him and his daughter. The room at the end of the hallway is open, and placing Li Fang's photo on the wall spawns a bunch of other portraits from her glory days. After our marriage, she stopped getting her portraits done. That's fucking depressing. This photo fits the final piece of the puzzle. This home belongs to our protagonist, Unveiling Yu, the same author of the screenplay, and his family. Yu writing a script based on a couple moving into a house isn't a coincidence. He's an artist who uses his real-life experience to fuel his work. Work which he's been very successful at, evident by the handful of best screenwriter trophies showcased in his cabinet. And finally, looking at the porcelain bowl, you can find the character Du, as in Unveiling Yu. He also says Li Fang and I got it custom made, referring to himself as I, just like when we inspect a family portrait. I don't know if the developers purposely named the character Yu as a play on words.
Hey, you. You're finally awake.
Especially when they vocalized how hard it was to translate this game to English. But the play on words here is clever, and overall this segment's use of environmental storytelling as a way to identify our mysterious protagonist was thoroughly entertaining. After returning to the living room, the lights quickly go out. Spotting a flickering light, we walk down the L-shaped hallway and spot a ballerina doll inside our very fucked up fuse box. Do I hear music? On the table, we hear the source of the music, a radio surrounded by a bunch of red candles. I'm not gonna lie, creepy static aside, this song is really soothing. Approaching the radio, the shitty death animation from Phasmophobia plays, and we wake up in this weird, psychotic nightmare. Our loving wife gives us a lighter for Father's Day in the most unnerving way possible. Transported to Unveiling Yu's office, we take our wife's present card and leave through the front door again. This time we approach the same door, except it takes place in the year of the tiger, 1986, 6 years into the future. You've returned to the living room, and there are mannequins representing the lovely couple throughout the house, like on the couch, Yu's desk, even in the kitchen. Placed on Yu's desk is a school correspondence journal containing Mei Shin's homework and her daily journal. She writes about her father cleaning her room, to which her teacher comments that she should have cleaned it herself.
You should kill yourself now.
Despite this, we can see Mei Shin performs quite well academically. 95 for vocab, 97 for math. She's a smart, responsible kid, which sadly still isn't enough as she's prone to receiving criticism. Entering the kitchen, you notice your beautiful mannequin wife cooking and leaving the faucet running. I guess this bitch just has fun increasing the water bill.
Alright, I hear water running. Is that the fish tank? Hello? Sir, you are looking at nothing right now. Hello, ma'am? That's responsible, and that's quite a meal already. Okay. What's going on, sir? What's up? Oh, holy shit. Holy shit. Give me a cigarette. Give me a fucking cigarette.
Devotion's use of jump scaring you with still objects is awesome. Progressing through this version of Yu's home is extra stressful because you have no idea if the next event you just triggered, such as picking up an object or walking through somewhere, has every mannequin appearing behind you. It's generally creepy and unsettling without being in your face about it, and I don't see a lot of horror games doing this. A really unique way of getting scared. Inside Mei Shin's room is a small chair on the bed. The bathroom is still locked, but inside the master bedroom, we find more mannequins. In this scene, the parents are taking a photo of Mei Shin, who's represented by a doll. There's actually some pretty deep symbolism here. The entire family are seen as decorations meant to look human, but the parents are mannequins. In terms of toys imitating human beings, sure, mannequins are fake, but also strong and confident. Mei Shin, on the other hand, is a doll meant to be taken care of, yes, but from a far more cynical sense, also meant to be played with and controlled, lacking any free will. Yu takes the doll and places it on the chair in Mei Shin's room, spawning a paper explaining a birthday grab. It's this ritual where parents place various objects in front of a child and see what items the baby grabs. Whatever item the baby picks up will signify the baby's interest and function as a sign for who they will grow to be as a person. So if, for example, a baby picks up garlic, garlic sounds similar to calculate in Mandarin. The parents will understand this event as a prediction that the child will have a career in accounting. Onion in Mandarin sounds like smart, and they will understand that the child picking it up as a representation of a future with an intellectual career. Something as small as a birthday grab does a great job at establishing the relationship between Mei Shin and her parents. I mean, from the parents' perspective, a birthday grab is almost the perfect mix of monitoring your child while giving them choices. Using this tradition, if your child picks up something that sounds like calculate, you'll naturally want to support them into becoming an accountant. They get what they want, and you'll be there to guide them. The birthday grab falls apart if whatever the baby chooses ends up not reflecting their personality or future interest. Assuming that there is no concrete evidence that any information from the grab is correct, and you're following the birthday grab's advice for the entirety of your baby's life, you are now forcing your child down a specific career path based on some ritual that isn't even grounded in reality. For a child to be locked into a career choice because their baby brain thought a pen looked interesting 20 years ago, it might seem like they never had a real choice, but from the parents' perspective, it's the best choice. After all, during their development, the baby chose it. Using rituals for answers on your child's future instead of, trying to understand them as individuals is a very narrow way of thinking that's ultimately toxic to the relationship between the parent and the child, and ironically, the child's development. But that's how these parents love their child, Mei Shin. They believe they're doing the right thing, they are devoted to her and love her so much, but unfortunately, they're victims to their own biases, their practices, and superstitions, and Mei Shin suffers because of it. That's the beauty of Devotion's narrative, though. The dynamic within this family is incredibly nuanced. Despite the parents' toxic behavior towards their daughter, you can never just say, parents bad, and just wrap the story up. Li Fang and Du Fengyu's treatment of their daughter is underpinned by a range of justifiable motivations. It is necessary for them to accept personal responsibility for their daughter's development and well-being, but as the player, watching from the outside and seeing this story unfold in retrospect, it's hard to fault these people who are just simply trying their best oppressed and are a product of their own time and victims themselves to their toxic culture, which we'll see later. For the first time in the game, the bathroom is now unlocked. Within it, you can retrieve a songbook, which you can then place on the piano. The piano automatically plays Happy Birthday. Suddenly, the living room has changed. The mannequins are gone, as is the furniture, and the room is now filled with pictures of Mei Shin. On the table is a birthday cake. The ballerina we found earlier is placed on top. Mei Shin mentions she wants to be a superstar just like her mother. Before settling down with Yu, Gong Li Fang was a famous celebrity. You can see her film crew sign her portraits, which she has a lot of due to being famous, and she also sings The Lady of the Pier, the same song we heard on the radio in the beginning of the game. The TV behind us plays an introduction to the Rainbow Star Stage, a children's talent show, before cutting off.
四海同胞喜欢唱，大明星、小明星、全国高手齐聚一堂。你来唱，我来唱，台之上并肩伸张。欢迎收看七彩新舞台。
Yu exits the living room through the front door and proceeds down the long corridor.
Kobe!
Picking up a script from the ground titled Birthday, it reads a brief interaction where a father asks his daughter what gift she wants and that he will grant her anything. The daughter mentions that she doesn't want a gift, only for her family to be happy and content. This script is based on a conversation Yu had with his daughter, showing the player directly the innocent, humble, loving personality of Mei Shin. This time, the key reads 1985, Year of the Ox, 1 year prior to the previous section. Inside the house, there's travel bags, and within the kitchen are big yellow X's on the window. The wind and rain beat relentlessly on the window, like a typhoon. Basically, East Asia's version of a hurricane. You can already tell that whatever travel plans the family had were unfortunately cancelled by the storm, seemingly last minute. On the table is a notice of injury. Mei Shin reportedly had difficulty breathing and was taken to the school clinic, where she was transported to a hospital. Examining Mei Shin's door, it reads, "Must wash hands before entering." Another one of the game's rare instances where they let you enter the bathroom. At the sink, Yu attempts to wash his hands, but is unable to. His hands bear an unremovable stain of blood, a metaphor underscoring the lasting pain he has inflicted upon his daughter, leaving an eternal stain on his soul. Yu enters Mei Shin's bedroom and starts pulling out syringes from the doll. Afterwards, a diagnostic report appears on her bed, relaying more information on her medical history. At this point, Mei Shin's suffering from chest tightness and more difficulty breathing. However, according to the medical order, physically, Mei Shin is a healthy little girl. Unfortunately, whatever the doctors recommend to ail her mysterious sickness is ripped off from the page, torn by the initial reader, Mei Shin's father, due to frustration and denial of her sickness. Yu also finds pieces of an X-ray of Mei Shin. Exiting the bedroom, we notice the living room has turned into a clinic. On the desk is a script about a father saving his terminally ill son from pain by removing needles from his body. The wife worries about their child, but the husband stays determined, saying he's found another way to save his son. This is yet another story inspired by Du Fengyu's personal life. Mei Shin is suffering from an unknown illness, and while Li Fang worries, Yu is confident in his ability to cure his daughter. Afterwards, Yu places the cut X-ray film on the projector and arranges the scattered images in order, before turning the projector towards Mei Shin on the family portrait, which highlights her lungs red. Mei Shin has suffered from a mysterious illness, an affliction that the doctors are unable to identify, which her father is attempting to cure with his own means, as he's clearly rejecting the doctor's medical advice and their methods. A nearby phone rings and Yu picks it up. A religious mentor named Hugh tells our main character that she's heard of his daughter being sick and urges Dufang Yu to come upstairs to speak with her. Proceeding down the corridor, we enter a rundown apartment complex. On our way upstairs, we see projections of Mei Shin sporadically placed on our path. Instead of meeting mentor Hugh, however, we return back home. The walls, along with most everything else in the living room, have vanished, but the television is on. We watch closely as a broadcast of Mei Shin performing at the aforementioned child talent show, the Rainbow Star Stage, plays on the television. The show's band begins to perform the Lady of the Pier, the same number Li Fang famously sung in one of her films, and Mei Shin appears ready to perform the very same melody that her famous mother was known for. However, the footage cuts just as the performance starts to begin. Looking behind us, the couch has disappeared, and we see the family portrait in the distance. Past the image is the statue of the god Sigu Guanyin, implying that this is the god Dufang Yu, or even Mei Shin herself, might have called upon when she was suffering from severe anxiety attacks that the doctors would misdiagnose as just some unknown illness. Because Mei Shin was never sick, the doctors even report her being physically healthy despite suffering breathing issues. Mei Shin's mental health was declining rapidly due to her highly stressful all-work, no-play lifestyle, and the storm, which not only hindered her vacation plans, but more importantly, her hopes of ever escaping the pressures of her life, left her traumatized and feeling utterly trapped. This, in turn, exasperated her feelings of dread. Suddenly, we're trapped in a small room as we begin to drown in wine. Yu awakens in a bathtub located in a hub-like area. Throwing himself on the floor, he spots a fleeting glimpse of Mei Shin darting across the hall. If you look around, all the other doors around us are locked, so we're forced to approach the door that Mei Shin was leading us towards. However, when we arrive, the door shuts. Collect the fragments of the past, traverse into a flawless present. Leaving, we notice all 3 doors open for us. This area serves as the central hub for the remainder of the game. Each door acts as a portal, enabling us to essentially time travel through various segments of Yu's family history. Now, while we've previously explored these years already, there's still much more of this family's tumultuous past to uncover. The 1980 door teaches us more about the family from Li Fang's perspective. Entering the living room, Yu finds a cookie gift box, and in the kitchen, Li Fang's notes and a to-do list. As previously mentioned, Li Fang originated as a movie star. Her song Lady of the Pier, which is played rarely throughout the game, can be found on vinyl in the master bedroom. Not only did this song, along with her movie, kickstart her career, but also her daughter's potential career, as it's the song she's performed on the Rainbow Star Stage. For Li Fang, what was once an exciting life of stardom has turned into tedium, taking care of her family, like preparing little snacks near the TV and writing down to-do lists. She's completely lost her independence and is subject to the difficult standards set by Taiwan society for married women. In the master bedroom, you can find a pair of red dancing shoes and a letter from wife's friend, both a reminder of the life she's left behind. In the letter, her friend gets nostalgic about their lives growing up, how they plan to get famous together, a plan cut short by the reality of marriage and parenthood. Her friend also intrudes a little, writing how she's noticed that Li Fang's family sold their expensive ancestral home and that she believes it's a hint to a deeper problem within her family. And Li Fang's old friend is correct in her assumption. The Yu family were going through hard times. What troubles precisely are never answered directly, but heavily alluded to in the following scenes. Like this hole in the wall, Yu interacts with the hole by peeking inside of it, only to find himself through the other end. Seamlessly, we embody Mei Shin, who's unintentionally annoying her father by disrupting his work, nagging Yu to pay attention to her. Li Fang warns Mei Shin of bothering her father while he writes, but it's already too late. Entering the kitchen, you hear a radio broadcast giving dating advice. A supposed Renee from Taipei asks the broadcaster for advice on changing her husband. Apparently, her husband's career is in the dumps, he's making no money, but he still lives lavishly and spends money recklessly, like a king, or more accurately, as if he were still rich and successful. The radio host tells Renee that getting a person to change is difficult, that her husband still identifies with the life where he was making money, and it's easier for him to pretend he's still successful than accept this sad reality that he's not anymore. Renee and her supposed husband aren't real, at least their names aren't. Renee is actually Li Fang, who's written to the show anonymously about her troubled husband, Du Feng Yu. While their aliases on the show aren't real, what is real are the problems the couple were facing. Yu is no longer a successful screenwriter. His sudden outburst isn't him just having a bad night writing, but rather has become a norm. He hasn't written a successful script in a while. He's running out of money because of it and is spending crazy amounts to compensate for his sharp financial and professional decline. Considering Li Fang's reputation, if word ever got out that the once famous singer was suffering from financial problems and a shitty marriage, it would be destructive to her image as the public would begin gossiping. This theory is confirmed by the note you find on the ground from Yu's old friend, detailing how his latest screenplay, The Lives I've Lived, has been rejected by 6 directors. It's a pretty harsh letter, but you get the feeling that it's warranted, and I like how his friend begs for forgiveness because even he knows how brutally honest he has to be with you and just straight up tells him that whatever the hell he's been writing lately is dog shit. Entering Mei Shin's room, you find a flower pot note. It reads, "You've turned my deepest misery into a comforting flower." The meaning of this is actually really sweet, but we'll get to that later. This is one of my favorite doors ever because from Li Fang's perspective, you understand how hard marriage can be and the sacrifice a successful woman has to make to settle down and have a family, especially in this tough culture. Obviously, everyone has to make sacrifices, or, should when bringing a child into the world, but Li Fang had a really good man. She even found a husband who was equally successful as her in a creative field. But all of that is crumbling now. It's admirable how Li Fang never let the fame go to her head, and at the end of the day, she's not too proud to start a family, to let go of all the fame and glamour, to let down old friends. She even calls the radio station for advice, like any housewife. She's not above anyone who's a mother and a wife, and she keeps a level head and sees reality for what it is. Li Fang is the character in the game who's gotten the most attention in her life, and yet she notably defies the stereotype that fame corrupts and hinders personal growth. We exit the living room and find Li Fang staring at the bulletin board outside. On the bulletin board is a news article discussing how the famous singer Gong Li Fang has left the life of fame to devote life to family. The 1985 door teaches us more about the family from Mei Shin's perspective. Entering the living room, Yu finds an Elysian travel guide. While examining, the player will find a note on the back. It's from Li Fang, explaining that Mei Shin is very upset since the typhoon has prevented her from going on a trip, asking Yu if he could read Mei Shin her favorite storybook. Entering the master bedroom, we find the tale of Sigyu Guanyin, a small story of a dying novice monk who was saved by a serpent offering his body, flesh, and blood as a sacrifice to the monk. The poem also describes the snake's blood as being brewed into a medicinal wine. This story will be very important later on. Returning to the living room, Mei Shin's doll holds a correspondence journal entry. She writes about how hard it is being confined to her home. Repetitive broadcasts loop endlessly on the TV. Her illness continues to have her isolated inside, and the parade of doctors she's seen, none of who are able to pinpoint the nature of her sickness. She writes about feeding her father's arowana fish. It must be sad being stuck in its fish tank, just like me in my house. Dropping the note, you wake up in a strange room. Mei Shin's doll is behind glass and being controlled by buttons, mirroring how she feels trapped and controlled by her parents, repeating the same predictable and ordered steps every day. We learn that she's also behaving rebelliously, hiding her parents' keys in the closet and refusing to take vitamins that her mother gives her. Mei Shin is frustrated and feels like a prisoner in her own house. Instead of taking her pills, she feeds it to the fish she was assigned to take care of. Returning to the living room, bedroom, you find a marble where the fish's eye should be, and one last correspondence letter. Mei Shin writes about her frustration. Even when she's obedient and takes her medicine, her father, despite promising initially, doesn't allow her to go outside. She calls her parents liars for prohibiting her to play despite following orders. She also gets into more detail about how the medicine doesn't make her feel better and how she won't take her parents' lies anymore. In the master bedroom, Yu inserts the marble found inside the fish and completes the minigame within the box. Successfully completing it rewards you with a suitcase key, the same key Mei Shin hid in the closet. Opening the previously locked suitcase, Yu finds Mei Shin's favorite storybook, Flowers in Love. Mei Shin's doll is now sitting on her bed, imitating Mei Shin's excitement in the past when Yu would read the storybook to her during bedtime. Opening Flowers in Love transitions the gameplay into a 2D format, putting Yu in control of the main protagonist of the storybook. The story follows a girl and her father. The plot unfolds when a gigantic boar knocks the father to the ground, fatally wounding him and leaving him bedridden. The daughter tries to find a way to heal her father, but the father remains in constant pain. No herbs or drinks seem to remedy his predicament. The devastated girl named Shasha decides to embark on an adventure to find a cure. She finds a temple to the fertile goddess, who gives her a sort of cure. Gifting Shasha a magical seed, she explains to the girl that the seed will blossom into a flower that will cure any illness, perfect for her father's dilemma. But for the seed to grow, it must be fertilized with the most precious thing in the land. Shasha thinks to herself, my father used to tell me the most precious spirit water is located on top of the sky tree. So she embarks on a journey to gather the liquid so that the seed may bloom. On her journey, she comes across a bear, fighting deer, and an owl. Shasha passes through them by using items in the world to manipulate them into clearing a path for her, like throwing an apple so that the bear makes a bridge, grabbing antlers to disguise herself from the brawling deer, and capturing a caterpillar to get on the mother's owl's good side by feeding her children with it. Pretty dark or insensitive strategies for a little girl, and here Mei Shin shows her empathetic nature and begins to modify the scenarios of the storybook. She resolves all of the conflicts that the animals face. She created bubbles to carry the bear to safety, gave the deer glasses to repair their vision and stop fighting, and fed the baby owls chocolate so they don't have to eat the caterpillar. Mei Shin's selfless action paved the way for Shasha's safe passage while ensuring the happiness of everyone involved. This showcases Mei Shin's remarkable capacity for empathy and her desire to spread harmony and positivity in the face of adversity. No matter how frustrated she is with her parents for imprisoning her in a life of solitude, despite all the pain, frustration, feelings of isolation, she still wishes for them to have a healthy, lovely life. Near the end of the story, Shasha tragically discovers that the spirit water has run out and she's unable to fertilize the plant with the most precious thing in the land. Her dying father tells her that it's alright. As long as you are alright, Daddy has nothing to be afraid of. Shasha weeps with sorrow, her tears water the seed, and it grows, blossoming into a beautiful tulip. And her father realizes that his daughter is the most precious thing in the land. Now that the father is cured, they plant their garden with tons of tulips to thank the fertile goddess. The father and daughter, looking after the sea of tulips, live happily ever after. Turning to the final page, Yu discovers an origami tulip. Mei Shin colored some of Yu's discarded manuscripts. Frustration had driven Yu to toss his work aside, overwhelmed by his creative struggles, yet Mei Shin, with her extraordinary creativity and optimism, breathed new life into those discarded pages, crafting them into something beautiful and soothing. Realizing this, Yu states, "You've turned my deepest misery into a comforting flower." Returning to 1980, you can place the paper tulip in the flower pot located in Yu's old office. Leaving into the hallway, Yu overhears Li Fang and her mother talking on the phone. Li Fang is having a hard time in the marriage and asks to stay with her mother for a bit. The mother seems worried about her marriage, but Li Fang assures her that she's only visiting because she misses her mother, which is a lie. Du Fengyu's unwillingness to change is causing distance between the couple, and Li Fang is thinking of a strategy to save their family from ruin. Opening the window, Li Fang cuts the conversation short, fearing that Yu is eavesdropping, and the letter falls out.
你等一下，他好像在听。
In the letter, Yu's mother-in-law writes about how marriage is a process of growth and learning, reminding her daughter that being an actress who's separated from her husband will cause gossip, ruining her reputation, and that her child needs a full family to develop properly. In the doorway marked 1986, the living room television plays the Rainbow Star Stage. One of the judges commended Mei Shin for her flawless rendition of the Lady of the Pier, acknowledging the complexity of the piece and her impeccable execution. Yet, the judge also highlighted the performance of Mei Shin's competitor, a 4-time reigning champion of the show, calling their song choice ambitious and how their performance is always a wonderful surprise. He emphasized that deciding the winner between these two remarkably exceptional child singers would be a challenging task. In the master bedroom, Yu sets the Lady of the Pier record spinning on the vinyl record. As his wife's beautiful voice fills the air, we also hear Mei Shin's harmonious singing coming from right behind us. As Mei Shin's voice blends with her mother's on the recording, she abruptly breaks into tears. Sensing her distress, we gently approach the bed where she's seated, attempting to comfort her. Suddenly, she disappears, dropping Li Fang's crown onto the bed. The apartment has been entirely transformed into a red hue. Mei Shin's doodles are covered all around the walls. The paintings now feature red, glaring eyes, and there are unsettling eye ornaments that shift eerily around. Additionally, the music has also been lowered in pitch, giving it a chilling sound. The television continues to play the rating segment of the Rainbow Star Stage. Both Mei Shin and her opponent each earned 7 stars, leading to a tie. However, there is an additional numbers-based scoring system in place. Just as the scores, which determine the winner, are about to be revealed, the broadcast unexpectedly cuts off, leaving the outcome a mystery, at least for now. In Mei Shin's bedroom, we find one of her essays titled My Dream, where she writes about her dream to be a famous child star. Like her mother was a superstar, she wants to sing to everyone on TV one day, and she accomplished that dream, but there's a darker turn to it. After closing out the letter, the screen fades, and we briefly take control of Mei Shin, who's stressed out from homework and hearing her parents argue. A discussion about financial matters becomes tense and deteriorates into an exchange of personal insults, with each parent criticizing the other's habits. Yu criticizes his wife for wearing revealing dresses, and Li Fang criticizes her husband for his spendings, including monthly donations to Sigyu Guinan, a goddess who's clearly not helping them. Li Fang continues to trash his writing, and Dufang Yu takes Li Fang's dress, tearing holes in them. In an effort to ease her tension, Mei Shin taps her marbles against each other. The screen begins to fill with images of mathematical equations and furious lips. The players must rapidly and continuously tap the marbles together to prevent the overwhelming images from dominating the screen. Slowly, however, the images, intertwined with the escalating argumentative voices of her parents, grow unbearably loud. And succumbing to her mounting anxiety, the marbles escape her grasp, and Mei Shin faints, collapsing onto the desk. At the central hub, a vivid portrayal unfolds, illustrating Mei Shin's complex relationship with performing. Although lauded by critics for her flawless singing, the intense pressures of performing trigger a profound reaction in her, leading to a state of extreme distress. The moving eye decorations in the living room could symbolize Mei Shin's stage fright, reflecting her inner conflict regarding performance. This suggests that Mei Shin's true feelings towards performing might be of reluctance rather than passion. Mei Shin's motivations to sing publicly appears to stem from wanting to make her mother and her parents proud and happy, something that's been echoed throughout the entire game, rather than genuine love for performing itself. Stepping into the closet, we once again take on the role of Mei Shin. She recounts how the closet has been her sanctuary, a place where she escapes to cope with her anxiety, especially when her parents have guests over. As we navigate the closet, now stretched far beyond its usual dimensions in this dreamlike scenario, decorations from the birthday grab tradition dangle overhead. The closet passage eventually opens onto a stage. Here, Mei Shin expresses a longing for the talent show to be held in the comfort of the closet, her safe haven from the outside world. In the solitude of the audience, Dufang Yu stands as the sole spectator, admonishing Mei Shin for her silence and reluctance to sing. Inside the closet, a script inspired by Mei Shin's first birthday grab, and one of the 3 pieces of the carved fragments. This one contains a little girl carved on it. act of placing a tulip in the pot at the 1980 door has led to an intriguing consequence. 5 years into the future, at the 1985 door, grass and flowers have flourished, not only on the front door, but the interior is almost entirely covered in tulips. This suggests a temporal connection between the two doors, where actions in the past have a direct, flourishing impact on the future. Mei Shin recounts the story of the day the typhoon ruined her trip, how much she suffered from laying in bed, but fondly recalls a memory where her father gave her the previously mentioned storybook as a gift. He often read the book to her before bed. She made some of the parts sillier by drawing, and Yu even taught her origami. Initially, Mei Shin found it challenging to craft tulips from her father's old transcripts. However, with time, she became quite good at it. Crafting origami is a patient, solitary activity, far removed from the scrutiny of parents, teachers, or an audience, and it served as a therapeutic escape for Mei Shin. It brought her such relief. Her anxiety, as well as her breathing issues, lessened significantly. Mei Shin crafted the best looking tulip she could make and hid it behind the book, so the next time Yu reads it to her, he'll find it, which is exactly what happened. On the bed, we find the second carved relief fragment. It contains a man carved into it. Traveling back to 85, we place Li Fang's red shoes, dress, and crown into the wine pot. Another vision occurs. When we enter 86, the living room changes into a hallway. We traverse it, stepping on an elongated version of the same serpent from the tale of Sigyu Guanyin. As Mei Shin's voiceover plays, she describes her experience with anxiety. In the solitude of her home, her mind begins to race with overthinking. In class, her imagination spirals into imagining bad scenarios. These anxious thoughts manifest physically. She experiences headaches, a suffocating feeling, difficulty in sleeping, and she finds herself shivering and coughing at night. Out of options to cure his daughter's sickness, Yu has been trusting Mentor Hu to remedy Mei Shin's health. Li Fang is skeptical of Mentor Hu and warns Mei Shin not to trust her. Mei Shin, however, trusts the mentor because her father does. The vision shows Yu opening a door for Mei Shin as she willingly drops to a pool filled with wine and the corpse of the serpent. In the tale of Sigyu Guanyin, there's a mention of a dead serpent and blood being utilized as a form of medicinal wine. This practice is ineffectively adopted by Du Fangyu and Mentor Hu in an attempt to treat Mei Shin's mental illness. Her jumping not only symbolizes her leap of faith, as she's placing her trust in both a religious mentor and their god to benefit her health, but more importantly, it illustrates that she only does so because of her love for her father and his unquestioning adherence to Mentor Hu's guidance. If you look closely, Mei Shin wasn't forcefully pushed by Du Fangyu. Rather, she made the active choice to jump, to harm herself due to her blind devotion to her father. Before her body hits the ground, we see the wine pot slam into the ground, spilling its contents all over the kitchen. A script is found where a child, after inheriting a ton of valuable items, promises to use their new riches to take care of their parents when they get old. Next to the script, the carved relief fragment 1 is found. There's a woman carved into it. As we exit the room, the tension is palpable, the air charged with anticipation. The results of the talent show are displayed on the television. The first contestant, Mei Shin's competition, stands tall with a score of 89. Then there's Mei Shin. We've journeyed with her through a labyrinth of anxiety, witnessed the shadows of her trauma, and felt the sting of abuse alongside her. And with bated breath, her score is finally revealed. A heart-wrenching 88. By the narrowest of margins, just a single point, Mei Shin's valiant effort falls short, and she loses the talent show. The magnitude of this moment reflects not just the loss in competition, but the culmination of her struggles and the resilience of her spirit. Carved on the pieces of the fragments are a man, woman, and child, symbolizing family. Collecting all the fragments, we walk towards the final door. But every time Du Fangyu tried to reach for the door, he's instantly teleported back. Until your possessed wife begins to chase you down several hallways. If you're caught, you're killed, resulting in the only game over possible in the entire game. After going through door after door after door, eventually you hit an elevator, which conveniently doesn't close as you're getting chased by your crazy wife. Li Fang starts to instant transmission towards you, but the charms on the ceiling get rid of the evil spirits inside of her. She falls to the ground as she takes one last look at you. Behind you is a portrait of Sing Yu. An interview with your wife begins to play. Gong Li Fang returned to the film industry. During the interview, she downplayed her troubles at home and explained that she's returned as a star because she could never give up the life. This was a lie. Her situation at home was awful. and she didn't want to share that information with her fans. When asked about her husband's thoughts on her returning, she mocked him, said that he doesn't have opinions, but thunderous slander, and that all he cares about is his delicate ego. The interviewer asked if she thinks that's a little harsh, to which she, after dealing with all his toxicity, sarcastically responded, The interview abruptly ends. We hear her talking, presumably to her mother, about the terrible experience of living with her husband. We perceive Li Fang as a monstrous, possessed figure throughout the game because Du Fengyu has labeled her as such, truly believing she is demon-possessed. In reality, she's a concerned mother and wife, doubtful about the effectiveness of sending money every month to a god who hasn't shown a single sign of resolving their problems. And yet she faces the distressing accusation from her husband of being a demon. She feels betrayed and deeply hurt by the fact that her own husband perceives her as a monster. Despite how cruel she was being in that interview, she still loves her husband and her daughter. The true reason for leaving, for returning to stardom, is to gain enough money to save them. She doesn't abandon them, at least she doesn't intend to. Her departure is a flawed effort to gain enough money to rescue her family from poverty and religious fanaticism, and most importantly, to protect her daughter from a debilitating mental illness that is being improperly addressed through harmful religious practices by Du Fengyu and his mentor. She tells her mother that she plans to return and find a simple, quiet place for her family that they can all call home.
杜风雨，我好怀念我们一家人简单开心的日子。
As Li Fang walks towards the elevator, she's no longer a demon, and she begins to sing the last verse of her breakout song. With this verse, Li Fang is asking her husband that in a new life, when she returns with her wealth, will he be her husband again? It's bittersweet, but that's the complex nature of devotion. It involves three characters who, despite the challenging circumstances and the harm they inflict on each other, continue to love one another. Driven by this love, they are willing to go great lengths, even if it means causing pain in their pursuit of what they believe is best for each other. Behind Yu, a door opens, and he's transported to his living room. We finally see Mei Shin's performance of Lady of the Pier, the same performance that lost by 1 point and inspired the lifestyle tormented by anxiety, and it's beautiful. The joyful appearance of Mei Shin that's on screen is a great contrast to the real Mei Shin that's been standing in her room the entire time, glaring at her father while suffering from the effects of his influence. When we leave the chair, the TV loses signal, and most of the room disappears. Entering Mei Shin's room, we learn how her mother's abandonment affected her mentally. Mei Shin would suffer from nightmares, erasing her mother's name from essays discussing her family, lonely dinners with her father, visions of pills, fish, piano performance, television characters she'd watch on repeat, the talent show. Yu's hand comes out to comfort her. When he looks up, he stares at his own reflection in the mirror, recalling the moment the unhelpful doctors finally referred his daughter to a psychiatrist. Du Fengyu, of course, rejects actual medical assistance, diving deeper into religious fanaticism to heal his sick daughter.
你们才不是神经病！
Frustrated, he goes back to mentor Hugh, the only person, according to his own biased perspective, that helped his daughter feel better. Before him, an altar appears, and he begins to pray to sing Yu again. Yu enters a deep state of meditation, guided by mentor Hugh. We see a light flame, a representation of Mei Shin's essence. Apparently, the unsteady flickering confirms her soul's detachment. Instead of treating his daughter's anxiety effectively, Yu chooses to believe it's her spirit that's responsible for her symptoms. The next segment takes place in what seems like hell, the underworld, a corrupt place filled with lost souls, either roaming seemingly nowhere or lifting rocks indefinitely. You can hear the screams of these lost spirits wailing in suffering. A tree appears with Yu's silhouette. Yu enters the man-shaped hole, looking inside himself, using Sigyu Guinan as a guide to aid him. Entering a hallway, we see a projection of Yu speaking to us. He talks about a little flower Yu planted and how precious it was to Mei Shin. How whenever the flower would get damaged, Mei Shin would repair it, replacing dead petals with her nails and watering it with her blood. And even when the flower eventually bloomed, the little flower remained small, which means that it would be crushed by its own weight. This is a metaphor for Mei Mei Shin's anxiety and how throughout the course of the story, she's being crushed by her own mental illness. He talks about Mei Shin in the past tense, as if she's already dead, but claims there's still a way to save her, a fucked up, self-destructive ritual that will apparently free her spirit. Nothing of what we see in this section is real, at least not physically, but a deep dive into the mind of our main character, his religious beliefs, as well as how devoted he is to saving his daughter. What's sad is his religious beliefs and abusive practices are the cause for her anxiety in the first place, not the solution. Still, we're told throughout the story that Yu had difficulty changing and is pretty set in his beliefs, so he continues with the ritual. In the next room are multiple Mei Shins, all wearing masks of the cartoon characters she's seen a million times on repeat, being isolated at home by her father's orders. Afterwards, a statue of Xing Yu appears, as well as some altars. Yu must make a solemn oath to the god and sacrifices parts of himself to save her. I don't believe Yu is a bad person, and it's shown clearly here as the ritual requires him to remove an eye. It causes him to remove a tongue and even stab his own hand, taking his blood for her. This father is desperate. He loves his daughter so much and is devoted to curing her illness. But unfortunately, despite all the warnings from medical professionals, his own wife and daughter, he learns the harsh lesson of being so arrogant and just neglecting your child's needs through blind religious fanaticism. After his sacrifice, he vows one final time to Sigyu Guanyin. Yu wakes up in Mentor Hu's office. The place has been trashed and there's no sign of his mentor anywhere. She's abandoned the place without a trace. In her office, you find a cassette player, and outside, recordings of her other clients. Hearing these tapes is especially harrowing for the main protagonist. In the recording, client after client are complaining that none of Mentor Hu's instructions are helping these people. They're being misled. One client is tricked again into being devoted to her shitty practice. Another is gaslit into believing that the reason the rituals aren't working is because they aren't believing enough, and the last client loses his temper, yelling about how for the last 10 years, all of the money he's given to the mentor as offerings never actually benefited him, going to a complete waste. This client lost his father to cancer. They believed in Mentor Hu's religious advice so much, they declined chemotherapy for the poor old man. They, like Du Fang Yu, chose a slam religion over legitimate medical treatment to cure a disease. The client threatens to sue the mentor before the recording cuts off. Legal threats were probably the main motivator in Mentor Hu abandoning her office, but it's never confirmed. On the way back home, the screen begins to shake. Yu is coming to the realization that he has killed his daughter. We faintly hear a previous phone call from Mentor Hu advising you to place Mei Shin into a bathtub, fill it with wine, and throw in the corpse of a serpent like the tail of Sigyu Guanyin. She also tells him to keep Mei Shin in the bathtub for 7 days and to never open the door. For most of the game, the bathrooms are locked, symbolizing how long Du Fang Yu has left his daughter in the bathtub filled with wine for a week. And for one of the rare times we actually enter, it's when Yu washes his hands, which are filled with blood. A blood that he can't wash off, a representation of how he's killed his daughter and will never forgive himself for doing so. As we enter the apartment, we see a drawing from Mei Shin. It's of her family, and walking towards the bathroom, we see a single lit incense. Common practice for one to be placed around the area where a loved one has passed away. Opening it reveals a brightly lit room. For a while, we see nothing but white and paper tulips sprouting from the ground. We follow the paper floral and finally hear Mei Shin. She talks about how she misses her mom, her chest hurting from anxiety, and the breathing problems that she's faced returning again. However, when she makes flowers, she feels a little better. She believes if she plants enough paper flowers, she'll be cured, that she'll eventually become a superstar and make her parents proud. We follow the path of the flowers. Eventually, we spot Mei Shin. At this point, she's already dead, but there's some distance between her and Yu, indicating how she's finally free from her father, from society, and her mental illness. When we catch up to Mei Shin, there's still some distance, but she's finally playing in a park, achieving her dream of going outside, not only escaping the typhoon that kept her trapped, but also her mental illness after being sick for so long. She turns around to face her father and says the following.
爸爸，我们回家吧。
The screen fades and we hear The Lady of the Pier, performed by Mei Shin as the credits roll.
大海满是波浪，不见船如歌。他站在码头，遥望着北方，心思飞上白霜，心还惦着他，心里没说的那句回答。傻傻的姑娘，那一朵花，等着他回来。
One of the last lines of the song says, "If there's an afterlife, are you still willing?" Li Fang sang the same verse when leaving her family. Through this very same verse, Li Fang asks you that when she returns, will he still be willing to be her husband again? For Mei Shin, this has a similar meaning. Despite all the abuse and neglect from her father, all the pain and anxiety, she still loves him. Du Fengyu is Du Mei Shin's favorite person in the whole world, and she forgives him for the pain he's caused her. With this last verse, Mei Shin poses a question to Du Fengyu. If an afterlife exists, and if he's still willing, would he be her father again?